Welcome back to another live stream. Back to another live stream. Back
100 times?
to another live stream.
200 times?
Back.
500 times?
Probably.
Who is Jose Arteaga?
Jose Arteaga is a YouTube content creator with several channels focusing on different themes.
I can't do it. We'll do it live. We'll do it live. Thing sucks.
His main channels include travel vlogs and lifestyle content. On his travel channel, Jose Arteaga Travels.
You ain't got the answers, man. You ain't got the answers.
Additionally, he runs a cooking channel and engages in other personal projects that highlight his diverse interests and expertise. Projects and expertise. Projects and expertise. Projects, project, projects, project, 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 expertise.
I used to talk to my dates about electric cars. I can't think of anything more exciting than crack cocaine on Mars. We are all much smarter than we think we are, much less smart. We've got a pet snail called Gary, and this is from Gary the snail from South Park. We're already a cyborg. Buy a ticket and move to Mars. We are summoning a demon. Stab a funny thing through the heart. We're already a cyborg. Save up enough money to move to Mars. We are summoning a demon. We're dumber than we think we are.
If we can figure out how to establish a high bandwidth neural interface, then you're no longer a house cat.
Robots will be able to do everything better than us. Robots going down the street, killing people are definitely under stress. AI is a fundamental risk to the existence of human civilization. I think we should be really concerned about AI. I'm definitely under stress. We're already a cyborg. Buy a ticket and move to Mars. We are summoning a demon. Stab a funny thing through the heart. We're already a cyborg. Save up enough money to move to Mars. We are summoning a demon. We're dumber than we think we are. Where are the aliens? Maybe they're among us, I don't know. Some people think I'm an alien.
Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome back to another show, another live stream. That's right. We're all cyborgs already. You know, we're all in the great reset already. I know a lot of you guys out there are, think that you can outsmart and run whatever the hell's coming our way. But I'm here to inform you that we're right in the middle of it. We're right in the middle of it. So anyways, guys, welcome back to another show, another live stream. I'm sorry for being a little late today. Again, it's storming out there. I'm using Elon's Starlink, and yeah, sometimes he doesn't like it when I make fun of him a little bit here and there. So, but he is a good sport. So shout out to him. Shout out to the aliens out there and everyone else in the audience. Illegal aliens or not illegal aliens, whoever you are, welcome into the show and welcome back. And today we're going to be talking about, again, this dystopian future that so many of you guys out there, so many of us, are afraid of, or, again, we're worried about. But I'm here to inform you guys that, again, I don't know if you guys are aware of it yet or not, but we're already in it. We're already in the middle of it. It's already, we're very deep into it. And it's not, what you think it is. A lot of you guys are still waiting for the other shoe to drop, or for, you guys think that dystopia is just going to happen, was it overnight like that? But that's not how it works. It takes a long time. It takes a lot of work. All right. These people in power, they've been putting a lot of work and effort into enslaving you guys. And, you guys should, at the very least, be very thankful and grateful, for everything that they're going to be providing for you guys. All right. So, but anyways, it is kind of, interesting to, look at it from that perspective, because, when you're living in that first world, when you're living in the USA, Canada, Europe, a lot of the first world, as they define it, it's hard for you to really see that there are parts of the world out there that are not going to be functioning in this dystopia, or they're just not going to participate. Or again, the people in power, as much as they want to grab everybody up and slave the whole human race, they're just not going to be able to. They just can't. Again, one of the beautiful things about living out here in Mexico, or again, for anyone out there in the audience that lives abroad, lives in another country, and has access to how people live without technology, how people can live, without, being under any kind of stress that artificial intelligence is going to take their job, or that, technology is going to take over everything, or whatever it is. That's when you really get to see the bigger picture. Because again, as dystopia is rolling out where you're at, it's not rolling out over here. They're trying to roll it out in Mexico. They're trying to roll it out in other parts of the world. But it's just not really working out. In some areas, they're rolling it out a bit more aggressively than other places. Again, depending on how... It really all depends on the population. It depends on you. It depends on whoever's living in whatever particular country, how attached they are to the government, how attached they are to the system. And so, like in a place like Mexico, even though we are technically the first world out here, the reality is that most Mexicans, for example, they're not connected to that first world grid. I mean, they have the option to disconnect or connect whenever they want, and they can take it or leave it at the end of the day. And Mexico is just one of many countries out there that basically, that function under a similar system. But if you're living in like the USA, oh my gosh, I mean, you already know, that you can't say whatever you're thinking. You got to be careful with how you act, who you talk to, what you say, what you don't say. Regardless of how well you behave, it doesn't matter. Your job, your livelihood is just basically on a ticking time clock. And at some point, whether it doesn't matter what you're doing out there, at some point, you're worried that a robot's going to take over your job. Artificial intelligence is going to take over your job. All of that's going to take over your job. Again, both. The fact that you got to now have a super digital ID. You got to be on the grid to even function. Even if you're a bum on the street, you're on the grid because you're collecting, all kinds of, government help, government funds, in order to support your habit of living on the street, support your drug habit, whatever it is. So everyone, the government, the system itself has grabbed you and everyone else by the balls. And there's no way out, for many people out there. In fact, the way out for a lot of people out there is to completely disconnect. And at this point, again, just like Elon was saying in the song a little earlier, we're already so connected, okay, that we're cyborgs already. Again, I don't know if you guys know the definition of what a cyborg is, but basically it's a half human, half robot. And, we're already that. I mean, most humans, most of us cannot live without this little thing called the phone. And we're on the phone all day, every day, checking all kinds of things connected to the phone. Someone in the chat was saying right there, Jesse says, I love how TV and internet will go out in Mexico every time that there's like bad weather. So again, out here, whether it's just bad weather or bad infrastructure or whatever it is, people are used to, functioning in certain moments, without water, without electricity, without internet, without the government, without all kinds of things like that. But in your home country, in your area where you're at, you cannot function at all. In fact, everything's paralyzed. All right. If anything were to go down, if all of a sudden the internet goes down in your neighborhood or your city, oh my God, could you imagine, the chaos it would cause, or if the power were to go out, or if the water were to go out again, it's going to be a major catastrophe. It's going to be, again, people on the streets. It's going to be a lot of, violence and protest and all kinds of things. Again, we've seen it multiple times. There's nothing new here. As opposed to, again, when you're living in another country where, things like this, in many cases, are almost like a daily occurrence. So people just get used to it. So if all of a sudden the internet's down, well, okay, great. You know what I mean? I'm going to just spend some more time with the kids, spend some quality time reading a book. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's always something else to do. It's not like people are so connected as they are back where you're at. And so, for example, when I hear things like universal basic income, sure, something like universal basic income could be a solution, to certain countries out there that are going to be, basically so reliant on robots and reliant on new technology and reliant on so many things. And the people of said countries are basically so inept and have no ability to basically survive or work or do anything. Well, then that's where that universal basic income comes in. But is that universal basic income, is that something new? No, it's not. Go to any communist country out there and you're going to already see that they've already tried to implement that. But as inflation and other, economic, things happen to said country, well, that UBI, the universal basic income, basically turns to dust and it's worth nothing. So, for example, if you go to Cuba, everyone on the island of Cuba, same as Venezuela, they get a monthly stipend. They get a monthly universal basic income from the government. But since their currency is worthless, well, their monthly income at one point when they were first getting that UBI, it was great. It was wonderful. In fact, Venezuela for a long time was one of the richest countries in the region. All right. And now it's one of the poorest countries. All right. And everyone, back when they were first getting that universal basic income, yeah, they were doing great. But now, that universal basic income that most people get in, again, countries like Venezuela or Cuba, is, just pennies, literally pennies. It's like, $5 a month, give or take. All right. As opposed to like maybe $5,000 a month at one point, give or take. So, just so you guys can have an idea. So these are the things that are coming your way, because if all of a sudden, they force you to use a digital currency, they force you to take that universal basic income, they force you off of the workforce, they force you to, again, or not force you, but they take away the ability, in a sense, force you, but they take away the ability for you to have your own business, to have your own income, to have your own everything. Well, basically, they're imprisoning you in one shape, form, or another. And now, if all of a sudden the only money you're going to be getting is from the government, well, then you better behave, or they're just going to cut that away. And I mean, right now, even if you work for private companies, private entities out there, they can cut your bank account away. They can cut your money away. They can cancel your bank account. They can do all kinds of horrible things to you. And this is now. Imagine as the government gets more and more strong, powerful, tyrannical, and take away even more of your rights. Because that's the thing too. A lot of people, don't realize the fact that, The reason most Americans don't have any rights is because, well, you or Canadians or Europeans or Australians or whatever, is because you guys never protected those rights. You guys have never had to really protect those rights because of the way they've eroded them away. And now, when you're trying to, fight for those rights or trying to stand on those rights, you quickly realize that you have no rights, that you have there is no constitution, that you're not living in the United States, the freest country in the world. No, you're living in a tyrannical dystopian future. If you really understand like how China works, for example, because that's always the example that they use, saying, hey, we got to be careful because we're going to end up like China. Meaning, they want to instill some of these things because you're going to end up like China. But the reality is that the United States, Canada, a lot of these countries are already more dystopian and they're already a lot further along, all right, than China, all right, believe it or not. Because China, just like Mexico and a lot of countries out there, they might be dystopian, all right, and they might have, like the WeChats of the world, those applications, where everything is on the application, just like they're trying to do in the USA, where they're trying to get all applications, every single app, every single thing on one app controlled by the government or something like that. So even though that's the system that is in place in China, believe it or not, the minute you leave the big cities and you just go to any rural area, again, it's giant country, you quickly realize, oh, wait a minute, there's no enforcement of any of this dystopian stuff outside of the big major cities. And, all the officials are extremely corrupt like they would be in a Mexico, meaning that they're not, they're not lockstep, or what is it? They're not always in agreement with the government. And a lot of times, let's say that you're in a small town or, just a regular town, in China, and all of a sudden, you get in trouble, get arrested or whatever it is by something, you did online, or the government is telling, the officials to come after you or whatever, you can easily, corrupt those officials, pay those officials off and get off scot-free. Where in the USA is not like that at all. In Canada, it's not like that at all. All right. They're going after anyone and everyone, and they don't care. All right. And there's other forces in power. There's other forces that are really basically kind of running the show. And it is getting kind of scary and kind of crazy. And, again, in the USA, for example, one of the things that they're doing, or, again, they use China a lot to scare people into moving in a certain direction, is the fact that, they're always saying, hey, China is getting ahead of us and we need to compete with China. We need to keep up with China. So the best way to do that is to, well, do what they're doing over there, which is total control of the population. And again, you go to China, and if you're in China, you realize, hey, China is not really that communist per se or socialist. It's actually very, very capitalist. And when you go to the USA and you realize that it's not capitalist at all. Again, if you know the actual definitions of capitalism, actual definitions of communism, socialism, and things like that, you realize, hey, wait a minute, the USA is not capitalist at all. Because capitalism, okay, again, I'm not talking about crony capitalism. I'm not talking about oligarchies. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about just straight capitalism. You go to a country like Mexico or many countries out there, again, China, whatever, and you see open capitalism. What is open capitalism? That means that anyone and everyone can sell whatever they want, and there's very little regulation. There's very little oversight. You can do whatever you want. You can even, again, break laws and yada, 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 because there's no laws or anyone to really enforce them. Again, environmental laws, labor laws, and I can go on and on. And in the USA, I mean, there's a law for everything. There's a regulation for everything. Even if you just want to sell lemonade, in front of your house, are you kidding me? Before you know it, you're going to have a police officer in front of your house, knocking down your lemonade stand, arresting your 5-year-old, for selling lemonade without a permit, and so on and so forth. All right. It's a completely different world. And so they're preparing you, in the first world, they're preparing you to really kiss the boot. To really just, again, follow orders or else. All right. Again, look at everyone right now with what's going on with Trump. This is something that I am not pro-Trump, anti-Trump. I'm not pro-Biden, anti-Biden, pro-Obama, no, they're all the same. They're all horrible. Okay. They're all on the same team, yada, yada, yada. So throughout the years, you guys have kind of heard me talk about the fact that, again, I honestly thought that when Trump would get into power, that he would, again, use the excuse, okay, of the immigration in order to really go after you, not go after the immigrants. And again, you're seeing it right now. You're seeing how so many people that have been in the USA and actually done everything correct for the most part, how they're now being the target as opposed to the bad hombres that were supposed to be the target to begin with. And I can go on and on. Again, you're seeing, basically he's going and reversing on every single thing that he said he was going to do. Right the other day, he was just doing a partnership with Pfizer and all the big pharma. In fact, I think he's doing it right now. Bill Gates, he's part of the cabinet right now. They're mRNA vaccines for everybody. I could go on and on. You know what I mean? Again, the immigration policy thing, how all that worked. It was basically they give you a problem so that they can they create a problem so they can give you a solution. All right, and here it is. And I can go on and on and on. And again, I look right now, I see Sergio, shout out to Sergio out there. He says, Trump is a total nutcase. Listen, it doesn't matter who was in power. It doesn't matter who's in power. They're going to be doing the same thing. The end. The end. I don't want to hear any discussion on that. I mean, actually, I do. I like open discussion. I want to hear everyone's side of everything. But I mean, people today that are still thinking, you know what I mean? Oh, my team or my party would have done a better job. Or, if Trump was not in power, but instead this other person would have been in power, everything would be okay. You're all lost. You're all lost, especially now at this point, after everything we've been through all these past years. Again, everything from COVID to 9/11 to what's going on right now. I mean, I could go on and on. I mean, come on, guys. Really? We're still picking a side here. We're still believing that narrative as opposed to questioning the narrative even further. To me, again, before the elections, I felt bad for so many people that voted for Trump because, again, they were hoping that he was going to be the savior. They knew that he was a piece of crap, but they had to have they had to have some sort of blind faith in something and anything because there's no other choice. There's no other, there's nobody else out there. All right. They're all terrible. And so a lot of people, they just bought hook, line, and sinker, again, blindly, believing that this person was going to save them, change this, blah, 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 knowing fully well that he wasn't. In fact, again, his first term was terrible. And this one is even worse. And again, it doesn't matter who's in power. You know what I mean? They're all equally as horrible. And again, now with Trump in power, because again, a lot of people at the very least, before he got into power, they thought to themselves, well, hey, you know what? This guy's going against the deep state. This guy is not one of them. He's one of us. Blah, 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 blah. All those talking points. All right. And again, we're not even a year. We're not even a year into his presidency. I mean, fuck, you know what I mean? I don't even know what to say. We're not even a year into his presidency, and literally everyone's, the veil has been lifted from everybody, and most people are fully aware. I mean, let's just start off with his partnership with Israel and everything he's doing over there with them, and how, as we all know by now, how Israel is really the ones that are running the show and running the world at the moment. And so we're seeing a giant paradigm shift right now where, again, the people in power, all right, are, again, they're trying very desperately and very, again, very hard in order to contain and control everything, only to realize that they can't. Again, it's like, I like to explain a lot is that, the people in power have us in the palm of our hand, all right? And as long as they kind of just keep it like this, we'll be there. But what's going on, it's what's been going on for decades now, but we're really seeing the crunch now, is that they're tightening that grip. They're tightening the grip. They're tightening it. And again, guess what? It's like if you can just kind of make a little cup in your hand, you can put some water in there. But the minute you start closing your hand and start trying to grip that water, what happens? It's all gone. It slips through. It leaves. So that's what's going on. The tighter they squeeze, the more they lose control. And that's what we're seeing right now. Now, Is that to say that they're going to lose total control all over the world? No, I don't think so. I think that, again, I've said this, and I've said this for a long, long time now. Again, even before I moved to Mexico, there are going to be countries out there. There are going to be plenty of countries out there that are going to turn into not just dystopia. They're basically the Hunger Games, all right, or worse. And you're seeing that already. You've seen that. You've been seeing that for a while now. And then you see other countries that are, not even being affected by it at all, or very little, or almost nothing in comparison compared to what's going on where you're at right now. And so, for example, like out here, in Mexico or many other, Latin American countries, or just, other countries out there, no one's worried about any of these things that are going on right now, because they're just not being affected by it at all. And just think about it, how, are they going to be able to affect the whole planet, all 8 billion people, especially when a good majority, like 6 billion of those people, are not even connected, to all this bull crap that they're trying to push. All right. So, I mean, to me, that's the thing. It's like what I was saying earlier is like, again, why when you live outside of the, these dystopian countries, that's when you quickly realize and you see it's like, oh, wait a minute, there are whole countries, okay, whole cities, states, all whatever, just ginormous swaths of the population all over the earth that are just not participating at all. And even when they try to force that participation, most people just opt out. For example, out here in Mexico, they've basically been saying, okay, we're going to start making everybody go digital. We're going to start forcing everybody to, get a digital ID. We're going to start forcing, all these taxes. We're going to start, doing all the same crap that they're trying to do in your countries. And you know what the 90% of Mexico said? They're like, you know what? We don't need the banks. We don't need the government. Come get this money out of my cold, dead hands. We're just going to go back to cash only, suck a nut. All right, suck these balls. All right, we're going to do whatever the hell we want, and we don't have to participate, period, end the story. That's amazing. That's amazing. That will never exist in the USA. I know there's little pockets here and there where they're trying to do that, but they can't. It's just an impossibility because of the strength and the power of the federal government back home. And so it's just things like that. Again, not just the USA, in Canada, in Europe, in Australia, so on and so forth. You're seeing this. So, all right, let me read a few comments. I see you guys are chatting up about it. I don't want to miss you guys, right? DJ says, yes, the recent protests of Morocco and the world for the Gen Z movement around the world, this future is very hard to predict. Yeah, exactly. I mean, well, I didn't even know about what's going on in Morocco, but what about what was going on in Tibet? Was it Tibet or what was it? We talked about it the other day. But yeah, there's like all this change happening all over the world, Like in Thailand, they did something, I think it was in Thailand, where they did something similar, with the bank accounts, where they basically canceled the bank accounts of like 90 million, citizens. The citizens can still function with or without that bank account. And that's another thing too. So they'll throw that at you, all right, in the media, and you without ever being to Thailand or the Philippines or whatever, you hear this stuff and you're all like, you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, look at that, 90 million people without a bank account. How are they going to survive? But again, if you ever visit these countries and you realize, oh wait a minute, 90 million, bank accounts got taken away. But when you realize how many of those people were actually using those bank accounts, like you might be using them or relying on them on a daily basis, you're like, oh, wait a minute. They really didn't do anything. All right. Because most people are like, oh, okay, great. You know what I mean? Now you cannot track us. Now you cannot tax us. Now you cannot, do all these things to us. Where in the USA, you can't even do that. Like I saw a video the other day of some lady that was at Target in the USA, and she saw a bunch of those stand mixers. Man, what are they called? Man, I'm skipping out on the name right now. But those big stand mixers, for cooking. Man, I forgot the name brand. They're the really, really famous name brand. But anyways, these big mixers that cost like around $500. And for some reason, Target was had a fire sale, and they had that same stand mixer for $150 or $160 instead of the normal $500. So some lady, you know what I mean, the smart, had a bunch of cash. She went to Target and bought a bunch of these mixers. Long story short, she had to basically get into a confrontation with the people at Target because they didn't want to accept all that cash. KitchenAid, yeah, that's right, KitchenAid mixers, and they didn't want to accept all that cash. It's like, what the hell? At the end of the day, yeah, that they accepted the cash and she was able to walk away with her mixers, but how crazy is that? You know what I mean? That she was there. I mean, obviously, I think she had like $1,000 and she wanted to buy like a bunch of mixers, and they were like, no, what are you crazy? What do you have all this cash? Bop, 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 bop. I got friends of mine at home in the USA that have cash businesses, or they just have regular businesses, but also have cash that comes in through the business, right? And they go and they tell me all the time. And by the way, I've been warning them, but they tell me, yeah, man, every time I go to the bank to deposit this money into my business account, they're always looking at me side-eyed. They're always, asking me for all these IDs. This one time, this friend of mine got like, how do I say? It's like he had to talk to the branch manager and all this other stuff just to deposit cash into his own account. And it's like, what the hell? You know what I mean? And again, in Mexico's like the complete opposite. Many countries around the world is the complete opposite. Everything runs on cash. Everything runs on, gold and silver in many cases, and so on and so forth. And, people are not, they're not so attached to a bank account. They're not attached to the grid like that. Everything is done basically in cash or informally. Again, by person-to-person transactions. All right, and where in the USA, most people in the USA, they don't even talk to each other, interact with each other. Let alone try to do a business deal in cash or with a handshake or whatever. Like back in the day. So, it's just so many things like that. Again, when they, all of a sudden, let's say that when they roll out, when they're already rolling it out, but when they roll out the CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies, again, if your country, like the USA, where you're just attached to that digital grid and your currency is attached to that thing, and you have no, gold or silver, you don't even know how that works, you don't even know where to get it, you don't even know where to exchange it, you don't even know anything about that. You're up shit's creek. You're basically fucked. All right. As opposed to, again, many countries around the world where they don't even function within that economy. Look, in India, for example, for like the last 10, 15 years, they have been trying desperately to get that whole country of 1 billion people on a digital currency, on a digital grid, and it hasn't worked. Sure, in certain spots and pockets it's worked, but for the most part, you guys know India, you guys have seen India on TV. Most Indians are like, no, we function in a cash-only economy. And so, and in India, again, India is a little bit more technologically advanced than, let's say, Mexico and other countries out there. But long story short, at the end of the day, what most Indians did whenever they would roll out the digital currency and things like that is that they just went back to cash. So India had no choice but to get rid of cash. And they just got rid of cash. And you know what the Indians did? They just went back to the old cash. Cash that was being used as like collector's items or, didn't have any value anymore. They would go back to that. And in many cases, they would even print a brand new Indian rupee just so that they can use in their community, in their villages, in their cities, in their areas, and then just be 100% disconnected from the banks and the digital grid and all that other stuff. And why were they trying to get all the Indians on the digital grid? Oh, you already know why. The same reason they're trying to do it to you. So they can monitor your movements, so they can tax all your movements, so they can, again, just control you all the way up and down, the economic scale. And so like the reason I love like a country like Mexico, and again, I'm pretty sure most countries are like this, is that the majority of the population is pretty intelligent, and they know pretty much what's going on when it comes to all this. It's kind of crazy because, again, now, when you talk to like an American or Canadian, European, Australian, they kind of starting to understand this stuff, but they're looking at it more from a conspiracy, theory perspective. But when you talk to like a Mexican, I remember when I first moved out here over 7 years ago, and back then I was big into Bitcoin and big into crypto and all this other stuff, and I was always talking about that, and that was what was on my mind all the time. And I remember one of the first interactions I ever had with a Mexican out here was a Mexican taxi driver, just a taxi driver, okay, that you would never think in a million years, it's a taxi driver, man. Well, how much education could this guy possibly have? And so I started talking to the guy about Bitcoin, and he's like, "Oh, what is Bitcoin? I've heard about it." And long story short, within a few minutes, he was able to understand it. He totally got it. And not only did he get it, but we were having a conversation on monetary policy, on why gold and silver is important, why Mexicans don't have trust for the banks, why the governments are a piece of crap. And I was like, holy guacamole, this is just a taxi driver. Obviously, as I interacted with more Mexicans, sure, everyone had different, education levels, but long story short, almost everybody had financial education of some sort. And they just understood it, and they just got it. And sure, most people, there's no real need or reason to use cryptocurrency or Bitcoin out here. And why? Well, because they have such a robust system based on actual physical money. Again, gold, silver, other commodities, again, the paper money, cash, bartering. I can go on and on and on. And so because of all that, they understood it. And, Bitcoin is great, but, for them, they were like, well, we can just use the bank. I mean, we don't trust Bitcoin as much as we don't trust the banks, but if we got to do digital, whatever, we'll just use the banks. They have an easier, system to use. They have banking apps and this and that, right? But again, very recently with the brand new Mexican president, she has been, just trying to, instill that digital, grid and the digital system out here. And most people are like, you know what? We're done. We don't need this crap. We're not even going to participate. We're just going to turn it off and just continue with our life. And that's it. And by the way, you can see it. I was talking about it in my other live stream a bit, where you could see it locally, where all of a sudden, traditional formal jobs, they're declining, meaning unemployment is very low. Most employers can't even keep employees because, well, an employer, okay, in order to have an employee, especially just a regular business, they got to do the paperwork, and they got to be on the grid, and they got to pay the taxes, and they got to, and so that trickles down to the people. And most people are like, well, no, why would I do that? Why would I work 40, 50 hours a week, okay, busting my ass just so that I can make $500 a month, and then you can tax that money before I even get it, when I can simply sell tacos on the side of the road, or sell pieces of bread, or sell my ass, whatever the F it is, and I can literally make $500 a day or a week. All right, whatever, a day and a really good day, or a week, really, 500 a week, and I don't got to pay taxes. I don't got to be on the grid. I don't got to this. I don't got to that. And that's what most people do. And so, when you come to a country, again, like Mexico, or many countries like this, where everything is just functions on the informal economy that has no connection to a government or connection to the IRS, or, the Mexican version of the IRS or whatever it is, well then, and they have no enforcement agencies, they got no agents, the police are not enforcing anything because they can't and they won't. I mean, forget about it. Then, how can the government have any power? But in a country like the US, in many parts of Europe, again, Australia, Canada, whatever, man, not only do they have the enforcement agency, but they use that enforcement agency all the time. Whether they're going to send somebody with a clipboard, okay, to your job, to your business, or, to a police officer stopping you on the side of the road, or busting up your business, or whatever it is. You already know, and you know how much control they actually have over your lives. And one of the few things that saves a country like the USA from falling into complete tyranny, like you're seeing in the UK, Canada, and Australia, is the fact that, well, guess what? In the USA, you still have your Second Amendment, and everybody has a gun. In fact, there are more guns than people in the USA. So good luck trying to, really roll all that out, in the USA. And they're trying. They're trying. That's why you see so much gun violence and so much, of that insanity when it comes to, guns, because they're trying to get the people to, take away their guns. They're trying to take away the guns from the people and trying to get rid of all that. And so this is the best way to do it, but it's not working, obviously. With every shooting that there is, more guns are being bought. But in countries like the UK, Australia, Canada, they've already taken all your guns, or period, end of story. And you've seen how quickly everything has escalated in those countries. In England, in the UK, you can't even say, bad words. You can't even think the wrong thing before somebody's at your door, getting ready to arrest your ass. All right. In the USA, it's like, you come into my door to, try to arrest me over something I said on Twitter. I'm meeting you at the door with a gun. And again, depending on the state, depending on how much I can have that gun and how I can use that gun. Again, if you're in New Jersey, good luck with that. You know what I mean? You show up to your door with a gun, you're probably going to get shot and killed. But in Florida, for example, they just passed a bunch of laws, allowing you to open carry, literally. I mean, again, I'm originally from Florida, so I see videos from Florida right now, and I see tons of people basically just walking around with machine guns, walking around with shotguns, walking around with whatever they want. And again, try to enforce things on those animals out there. So that's the thing, you know what I mean? It's like there's a lot of insanity going on right now in the world, but one of the few, the last beacon, okay, of kind of freedom is the USA and the guns that the USA has and all that stuff, all right? And that's why they're trying to take away the guns, and they're trying to take away, the last, semblance of freedom that the people have in the USA, because once the USA falls, which it's going to fall, we're seeing it, whether they take the guns away or not, then that's it. Everyone else falls, okay? And what do I mean by that? Well, that whole idea of, again, that the free country, the USA, all that stuff that, we, the land of the free, all that stuff that we grew up with, that doesn't exist anymore. It's really not going to exist anymore. In fact, it doesn't exist in many countries around the world these days. In fact, where can you find, a lot of this freedom, or, the American dream? Well, you're going to find that in other countries. And again, why do I choose Mexico? Why do I talk about Mexico so much? Well, because not only do I live here, but again, Mexico's the next door neighbor to the USA. I grew up in the USA. I grew up in Florida. So I'm old school when it comes to, like, protecting my rights, Constitution, whatever. I'm old school, like that kind of stuff. In fact, a lot of people think I'm conservative. I'm not. I'm just, I guess, libertarian, I guess. I don't like putting a label on myself, but hey, I'm a live and let live kind of guy, but I'm also about, some of the conservative things, where, hey, you need a gun to protect yourself from the government type of thing, all right? Anyways, long story short, when you're seeing, when you go to like other countries around the world, especially like a country like Mexico, you see very quickly how things function here is how things used to function like 75 years ago, or, 60 years ago in the USA, where, again, the cops had little power, government had little power, and the people were the ones that had the power. All right. And that's how it feels like living out here. Because again, I live out here in Mexico, and I have everything. I have every single thing. In fact, I could probably got better than what you have. Again, I've mentioned it many times. I got malls. I got, malls with all the stores, the Orange Julius, the Dunkin' Donuts, the McDonald's, the this, that. So I got all that. I got Home Depot. I got Costco. I got everything. I got Amazon. I don't have it here, but on the last live stream, I got my Amazon package. I got everything here. Okay. I got all that and then some. I also got, technology, I can live stream, right? I got my Apple computer, which I'm doing this from. I got my cell phone, all right? I got everything. I got Instagram, Facebook, whatever. I got everything and anything, right? But again, the one thing I don't have is that control over my life like a lot of people do in the USA. You know what I mean? Like if this breaks, I don't need it. You know what I mean? But in the USA, it's like, I mean, think about it. If you don't even have a bank account, do you even exist? So yeah, it's a lot of things like that. I forgot. I lost my train of thought there. Let me read some comments. Emily says the Vietnamese were the ones that refused to hand over the biometrics to the bank. Yeah, that's it, and that's it. It's not a big deal. You know what I mean? Like people just function. There's an economy outside of that digital economy, the actual normal economy. That's the thing. It's like, so what they've done in the USA and first world countries and stuff like that out there is the fact is that they've taken away that ability for you to when you transact in cash, they treat you like a freaking criminal, for crying out loud. So where in a country like Mexico is the other way around. You know what I mean? Like it's like if you got too much digital money or too much anything, it doesn't matter. They treat you like a criminal too at the bank. All right, but not with cash. You can show up with a bunch of cash, no problem. Compared to back home. Let me see. Emily says the president of Mexico that preceded her was great. He was low-key during the pandemic and downplayed it, which was great. Yeah, exactly. I mean, man, what the old president was just AMLO. He was just the vehicle, for them to allow, for them to allow them to bring in Scheinbaum. That's the way I look at it. The thing is, it's like, again, after living here for so long, I see that there's so many things that are very similar, to our own countries back home. But when you're living in a country in which the government really does not have that insane amount of power that they do back home, that's when you realize it's like, oh man, you know what? Most Mexicans, they don't even care she's president. They don't even care. They already know everyone's corrupt, everyone's stealing, everyone's a piece of crap. All levels of government, whether it's a president or the mayor of their city, it doesn't matter. They're all crap. No one here is delusional and thinking that one is better than the other. Sure, from time to time during elections, they'll kind of do that. There are people out there, that are blindly gonna support Scheinbaum or blindly hate on her no matter what. So there's always that. But for the most part, the majority of the population, they just don't care. Meaning, okay, we voted for AMLO and for Scheinbaum, for them to bring prosperity, and well, they're kind of bringing some prosperity, but it's still up to us. And so that's the thing. And so most people are just like, whatever. I mean, these politicians are just sure, like for example, the last two politicians, again, Scheinbaum and AMLO, sure, they're giving a little bit more to the people, but they're still stealing, they're still corrupt, they're still doing all these horrible things. But since the people don't have to rely on the government as much as they do where you're at, well, that's why they just don't have that power. The reason that the US government, the Canadian government, the Australian government, the governments of the countries in Europe have so much power is because the people rely on the government for just about everything. So of course, when you rely on someone or something, constantly, well, of course they got control over you, period, end of story. But again, many countries around the world, they have no faith. Okay, they have, they don't put any, kind of, they don't have any faith, and they don't have that, and the government doesn't have that much control over their lives. So basically, the politicians get up there, they promise a bunch of things. Within a few months of them getting into power, the population realizes, oh, they are just like everybody else, and then they just go on with their lives, and that's it. It's not really affected at all. Again, Scheinbaum has done a bunch of things that, would, again, from the outside perspective, would be affecting, everyone's life. But when, you get to see, when you actually talk to the Mexicans, when you see day-to-day life out here, when you see, how things work, even in the major cities and everything like that, you're like, oh man, there's no way. There's just no way. You know what I mean? Everyone out here is always very rebellious and very anti-government already to begin with. And so they're just looking for any reason and any excuse to not listen, to not follow orders, and to just do whatever the hell they want. And I wish America was more like that. But it's not. You know what I mean? The USA is not like that at all these days. The USA these days, it's more about, you better follow the rules. Oh, you see, the reason you got arrested is because you must have been doing something wrong. Hey, if you got nothing to hide, you got nothing to worry about, and all that crap. You know what I mean? And so basically the USA, they were at one point just like Mexico. Again, freedom loving, don't tread on me. My rights, my constitution are, that goes over everything. We went from that country to now, basically every American is like, can you please tax me more? Can I please kiss the boot? Can I please, can we have more rules? Can we have more regulation? Can we have bigger government? Please, 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 please. Oh, I know the Trump government is pieces of crap. So can we just get in some Democrats in there? Please, 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 because they're going to fix everything, or vice versa. The Democrats are in power. Oh, please, everything sucks right now. But as soon as we get some Republicans in there, we're going to be good to go. And it's like, bro, are you guys all brainwashed? Are you guys all insane? Are you guys all dumbed down? Have you guys been drinking too much of that fluoridated water? What the hell's going on over there? I think that's what it is. It might be too much fluoride in the water, right? But what do I know? So, but that's the thing. Like it is sad, because as a proud American, I thought, I never thought in a million years that the USA would turn into idiocracy. And how dumb most of the population has become. And that's the thing, like I said, from the minute that I landed here over 7 years ago, and I was just talking to the taxi driver, I was talking to the guy, selling little tacos on the side of the street. I was talking to the shoe shine dude. I was just talking to just regular old Joes out there, regular people that never in a million years you would even think have any kind of intelligence or any kind of education. And the majority of the people out here have more education than the people in the USA that have graduated from whatever college with like 13 degrees. I mean, it is insane. It really is, it is something to see. But that's why it gives me hope. That's why, look, right now I am sad for what's going on in the USA, Canada, Europe, Australia, a lot of these countries around the world. There's other countries around the world. But at the same time, I don't feel that bad. You know what I mean? Come on, give me a break. You guys. Because the thing is, it's like, everything goes in cycles. And that's it. This cycle is ending, and part of the ending of the cycle is the fact that the population is so dumb that they don't even realize what's really going on. And that's the thing. Like I said, I see it out here daily. I live out here in Mexico. I have another channel talking about living in Mexico. I have people reach out to me all the time about, hey, I want to move to Mexico and yada, yada, yada. And they have all these unrealistic expectations as to what life is actually like. And it's like, listen, man, like outside of the USA, you have to be responsible for your own everything. There's no government that's going to be fixing anything. No government handouts, no government programs, no government money. The cops are not going to be, on call waiting for you to have any kind of hiccup so that they can, come and save your butt from whatever. It's just a different world out there. And, that's one of the things that I just love about, not being in the USA anymore. Is just the fact that it's I don't have to live in that tyranny anymore. In fact, I had no idea how, how oppressed we were, or how oppressed the people are in the USA, and how, what's the word I'm looking for here? How brainwashed everybody is in the USA until I left the USA. Once I left the USA and I was like, living out here in Mexico, I was like, oh, well, wow. Everyone in the USA is really just, brainwashed, or just brain dead, for the most part. And again, it's not their fault. It's a lot of it has to do with the system itself that has created this paradigm, has created this, the population of a bunch of dumb individuals. This is why I talk about that movie Idiocracy, because that movie Idiocracy, when it first came out a long time ago, it was a funny movie, but a lot of people are like, there's no way we're ever going to get to that. Okay. And again, that movie was like 1,000 years in the future. And yet we got to that future in 25 years. Give me a break. That's how crazy and how crazy fast everything moved. But in that movie, they make you think that, okay, the whole planet has turned into idiocracy. But the reality is that no, it hasn't been like that at all. Again, you go to other countries around the world and it's not like that at all. Yes, there are many countries that are idiocracy, USA, Canada, many parts of Europe, Australia, so on and so forth. But no, like there's, the whole idiocracy thing You know, it is. We're in Mexico, for example. We are 1,000 years away from that. Okay, and so on and so forth. And so, and when you go around the world and you see how other people live in other parts of the world, and you understand the whole historical perspective of how everything happens, the cycles, the empires, and yada yada yada, you're like, oh, you know what? It's time to leave the American Empire. Time to settle somewhere else. All right, and then we'll see what the next empire is going to be. We're going to see what the next paradigm is going to be, and we'll go from there. But you know, there's a lot of people that are just going to, you know, again, go down with the sinking ship no matter what, because they have been brainwashed into thinking that, well, that's the right way to go. You know, that's what you got to do, and so on and so forth. But I mean, again, this is nothing new. Most Americans live in an open air prison. All right, you guys are free range chickens for the most part, and even though you might think you're free, you're anything but free. And you really don't know this until you leave the country. If you ever leave your country, even on vacation, and go anywhere else, you quickly realize, you know, how freedom really works and how people are actually living free all around the world. All right. And, you know, someone that's like a simple, humble fisherman probably not probably, guaranteed has more freedom and a better life than most of you guys out there right now that have all the bells and whistles and live in the first world, you know, in the you know, in the best country in the world or whatever. So, and so, yeah, this is as simple as that. So, oh man, it's about to start storming again. I'm gonna see if I can wrap this bad boy up because I don't want I don't want it to start raining really hard and then the signal gets cut off because it starts starting to rain again. Yeah, because as soon as I finished the last live stream, like I literally turned off the live stream and it just started raining buckets out there. And then, you know, I was waiting for the rain to subside for me to go live. So far, so good. But I can see it's starting to rain again, and it's already starting to. Yeah, I can see the thunder, the lightning. I can already see it kind of falling apart over here. So, anyways, guys, I mean, I don't know if you guys have any questions or comments or anything at all. Let me know. Leslie Brown says, we don't live on a planet. It's a stationary plane. Okay, sure. Yeah, I guess. Whatever. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I'm not a flat earth dude, but I also don't believe NASA. So, you know, I don't know what's out there, but I don't think we live on a flat disk, you know, in the middle of space. But hey, who knows? Who knows, right? We don't know. All right. I don't know if you guys have seen that that there's like a meme or a GIF, you know, where it's like this is the flat Earth, and it's just like floating around, and you know, there's like a bunch of little dinosaurs on the flat Earth just floating around the universe, and then like what happened was is like the meteor hit, and when the meteor hit the Earth, so it's flat, it basically made it wobble, and then everybody just, you know, all the dinosaurs went flying into space. So maybe, hey, who knows? Maybe that's what happened. You know? Either way, you know, we'll find out soon enough. I feel like, you know, the whole Great Reset, obviously it's, you know, alive and well, and it's, you know, they're pushing that forward as fast as they can. But, you know, I don't think this is the Great Reset per se. I kind of, you know, I'm more of a believer of this is more like the Great Awakening. And unfortunately, you know, during this period of time, during a lot of these great awakenings, Renaissance, whatever it is, what happens is that a portion of the world is going to be living in dystopia. You know, they're going to be living in the apocalypse, while the rest of the planet is going to be in the Great Awakening, the Great Renaissance, the Great whatever. It's just the way it is, you know. Remember, you know, the USA and other countries around the world, they were living through the Great Awakening, Great Renaissance, great everything, and now all that's, you know, fallen off the cliff, and now they're heading back into, you know, dystopia. You know, they're heading back into, I mean, you know, the USA right now is very similar to how the USA was at the turn of the last century, you know, meaning in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and how things were in the USA back then. They're very similar to how they are right now. Now, again, we saw what happened the 100 years after that. You know, the USA became a major superpower and was able to lift up from that and, you know, build up a lot of wealth and a lot of, you know, greatness for the whole world, not just the USA. But now we're starting to see that it's coming full circle again. And, right now, people living in the USA, I mean, they're basically living how people were living in the USA at the end of the 1800s and the beginning of the 1900s. So we're there again. The way I don't know, that's the way I see it, but what do I know, right? So, anyways, guys, all right, with all that said, I'm going to get out of here. Got to wrap this bad boy up. The lightning is getting really bad out there. I don't know if you guys can see it. Probably can't see it, but I can see it over here, out of my window. So I got to get out of here. And we've already gone over an hour, so it's time to fly out of here. So, all right, guys, I really hope you guys enjoyed today's show, today's conversation. I really enjoyed having you guys here with me. You already know the deal. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to please like, please subscribe, please share, please hit the bell icon, but more importantly than anything else, please continue to stay awesome. So, all right, with all that being said, I'm going to leave you guys here with Alex Jones, and we're going to get out of here. So, love you guys, and I'll have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys on the next show. All right, so see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.
The company store, the paradigm of absolute control. And that's why we're just out here doing simple things, pointing out that we're meant to be in nature and be natural. And this is where we find the source that God made to transcend the New World Order. And that's why they want to try to keep us out of it.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people. They're a bunch of Christian murderers, scum. They're on giant death factories, keeping babies alive and selling their body parts. What more do you need to know about these people? I go out and face these scum. They literally crawl out from under rocks. They have green looking skin and they run around screaming, we love Satan, we wanna eat babies. I have them on video. Hillary's in the creepy, weird, sick stuff, man. She sleeps in the same room with that creepy, weird woman whose mother wears a hood over her head. What the hell? That woman number one is ugly. Imagine how bad she smells, man. I'm told her and Obama just stink. Obama and Hillary both smell like sulfur. Literal vampire pot belly goblins are hobbling round coming after us. My spirit gets close to that evil and I feel it go. We're such self-centered crap, we don't even notice hell itself rising up against us. Millions of pointed people of the very worst type, and I'm so pissed. We're gonna stab your daughter at the mall. We're gonna stab your wife, your son. We're gonna stab you with a butcher knife, and then the police chief is gonna say, we love our Somalis, we love our Muslims. Oh, they're so good, oh, they're so sweet. I was watching Fox News as I worked out this morning.
I am officially running for President of the United States. We need a leader. I will be the greatest jobs president that God ever